Ladies and gentlemen, we will start now the discussion of the seventh discussion panel, which is part of our agenda. We will have the presence to see a debate related to infrastructure of the Amazon region. The moderator will be Renato Meirelles, which I would like to invite to go upstage. Let's clap our hands to receive him. All the members are going to be José, Fernando Gomes, Secretary of the State and Social Development for Mines and Energy, also invited to be here on the stage. And also Luiza Antonaccio, she's a legal analyst from Climate Initiative. It's going to be online. Now, the word with the moderator, Mr. Renato Meirelles. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to see you again after a very enriching day of debates, which were very interesting. I believe that the focus of this event is extremely useful, and there is no discussion of any project, let's say so, from a country or a region in the Amazon region that wouldn't cover the infrastructure chapter. Thus, this is fundamental. We have the honor here to have the Secretariat of the State of Pará, José Fernando Gomes, and remotely of Luiza Antonaccio from Climate Initiative. As a moderator, I will just give a quick introduction. It's worth to highlight that Brazil is an extraordinary country for opportunities, exceptional opportunities, not only due to the natural wealth, but also due to the deficit that we have in infrastructure. On the many decades and years, we did not invest on what we should have invested related to infrastructure due to the average of our level of development. Brazil has invested 1.2% of the GDP on the last 30 years, and it was supposed to invest above 4 to 5%. This deficit that we have today in infrastructure needs to be addressed. This is a huge opportunity that we have now to be able to dialogue and discuss. And in the Amazon region, we need to do this with responsibility. We have to increase our infrastructure of all nature and always respecting the different particularities of the Amazon. Brazil, according to the studies that we have, needs an investment throughout the next 40 years of 4.2% of the GDP to recover this infrastructure in Brazil. We have to see a great work, especially in infrastructure, very important investments, very focused on the Amazon point, in some to see how this investment with this responsibility. And now I would like to thank all the organizers of the event, especially here which I'm part of, the Finland Chamber. That's why it's extremely important to have this debate to show the reality to the world that Brazil is sovereign and that protects the Amazon and does this very well, that has clear and strict laws for environmental preservation, does have modern legislation and much more efficient than the rest of the world. And also maybe what we're failing, and I include myself in this process, is in the communication. We need to communicate this so that we can have what is extraordinarily good and promising. So please, Secretary José Fernando Gomes, and also the Economic Mining Development and Power for the State of Pará, please, the words are yours. Good morning, everyone. Renato, our moderator, if you allow, can I stand up? Good morning, everyone. For us in the government of the state of Pará, and asking, I'm going with the proper distancing. I'm going to remove the mask to speak in a more comfortable manner. Once again, good morning to all. It's a great pleasure for us, for the state of the government of Pará, to be here in this discussion, Renato, in this conversation with all of you. I would like to greet the chamber and all the ambassadors that we have here, of João Augusto, our ambassador, and the host that received. It's a personal friend that now we could have this event, a wonderful event for all of us and for the Pará society. So I also greet Elder, the governor, that he really wanted to be here, but all of you know he is at COPI. And yesterday was a historical day, of course, and our governor announced an investment package for the small, mid-size, and all the traditional communities of almost 500 million reais. The biggest investment of any Brazilian state announced in COPI was done yesterday by Elder. 400 million of funding and 73 million, almost 80 million for science and technology, so that we can here in the Amazon, where all this development happens, respecting, like Renato has said, the environmental preservation. The governor made this milestone, and there's much more to come, because our government is always concerned with the micro to the Paraense society, but also with the sustainable development to the society. I'm going to talk. My name is José Fernando. I am the development secretary for mining and energy, Renato. And I come from the private institution to believe in this young governor, which is Elder, on the projects that have been developed in the state of Pará, in Brazil, and in the world, to take the development in all sides, but to take the development in a sustainable manner and respecting the environment. And I'm going to talk a lot about this. It's the mindset and the determination to support this in the environment. I will talk a little bit about our secretariat. For those who don't know, all the development themes go through our secretariat: bioeconomy, energy, industry, a partnership, and also a very close partnership with the productive sector of our state, so we can be together with the business. And I see the vice president of our federation, Maria Mendonça. The industry federation is being a huge partner of the government of Pará, so that we can be more and more knowing our industries. For those who don't know the state of Pará, we can put all the southeast region in this area. So it's a very competent and serious, like the governor. Here are the key words of our secretariat. You can skip. When we took over, I came from the private initiative. Our governor, due to his determination, has strengthened the development economic secretariat, putting all the agendas there. So that's the channel for the productive sector of our sector can speak with the secretariat. But not only this, that we can be approaching and using more investments for the state. That's what he's doing there for the state of Pará. Our geographical position, it has a privileged position, besides having a port of all the regions of the world. We are strongly working, as you have said, my dear moderator, my friend Renato, on the infrastructure. We have started a study of a bridge so we can interconnect Belém with Barcarena, so that we can take the development for this region. The study is started. It's going to go through all this environment. Here is the route, showing how it's going to happen. Hidrovia Tocantins. Hidrovia Tocantins is a project. We already have a licensing process at IBAMA, and we need to talk about this to the European, that the hidrovia is going to be a logistic solutions for Brazil. This waterway, what is going to happen to it, we are going to have a cargo inversion which comes out from Santos port and it's going to come out from the Barcarena port. And today the waterway has all the studies, and maybe next year we're going to start with this works. And it's important to highlight that we do have, besides Marabá, there's another city called Tupiranga, and then you have Pedral do Lourenço. What is going to happen there is the correction of the existing natural channel. We have a channel where the vessels go through. We just need to expand, and also the depth, so it can have the waterway until our port. Logistics integration, as requested. The governor has focused on this theme a lot, and here in the state of Pará, we have a very audacious project, which is the Railroad of Pará. The Railroad of Pará, when we took over, was not being used by other governments. Nobody did it. Our government, on the 15th of June, has delivered all the environmental study, but the Terra Meio Ambiente is a paraense company that covered all the environmental study and the Secretariat, so that they can make all the details for this study, and then we're going to have all the points which are the requirement for this project. We're going to have the public hearing, listening to the communities, as I have said to you. It's a milestone in the Secretariat, delivering the study of our railroad, and we're going to go through these municipalities. Can you see the logistic revolution that's going to happen? We have 12 municipalities. We're in a 515-kilometer railroad. We are going to be generating a lot of income. It's going to take around 4 to 6 years, maybe before, but let's consider it's going to generate development in all these places. And by the development, mining and energy, that this municipality would have a consortium, so we can qualify the local population so that they can work on the works, or to be a supplier for the company that's going to build the railroad when the licenses and environmental studies are approved. We have 12 municipalities being part of this for 4 or 6 years. Once again, the Railroad of Pará, through the Secretariat, we have done this in a very clear manner. We have visited all the municipalities independently of SEMAS, which is our brother by Mauro, which is also at COPI, demonstrating the study, and here in a very transparent manner that the study for the railroad goes through these areas. So it has this concept and this concern of sustainability on its scope and in the development. Here we have the pictures as evidence of all the visits that have been made by our team, all the meetings in these 12 municipalities. Here in our state, we also have Ferro Grão, which is the development project in the Highway 6-3, and now there is a decision on the upper court. Let's wait for the decision. This is also a priority project. It shows here from Sinop until Muricituba. And then here I reinforce the importance of the private sector to support the development of the state. They have never denied, Renato, to debate and discuss the world, what we need and what we are doing for the development of our region. And we will also have here a revolution. We have the PA 150, for those who don't know the state, it comes out from Marabá until the Vila do Conde port, and until next year we are going to put this concession for the society to make all this investment. A little bit of the details. I'm not going to go into details due to time. We also have worked strongly, Renato, on the councils of the PPPs. I'm the president of the councils, which is in the development of the sector for mining and energy. Today I am the secretary, and we're open here. There is a good challenge to all of those who are watching us or remotely, so that you can use the council, so that we can be developing all this public-private partnership inside the Development Secretariat for Energy. We are also working in our energy and solar industry. It's fundamentally important. We're talking about sustainability, so it's the theme of this panel and all of the others. We're working on the Atlas for the aeolic, strongly together with the Senai Institute for Innovation, that we have made this in the 4 corners of Brazil. In the northeast we have already visited to replicate it here. Here we have the Senai Innovation Institute for Mining. Today we have a sustainable mining, respecting of those who went to Carajás together with our vice president, which is going to arrive later, Hamilton Mourão. They have visited the national forest with 400,000 hectares, only 2 used for mining. And next year, a dream. I used to say that this is a dream since the railroad was one of the projects that was not moving in this project. The natural gas. We don't have natural gas in this state. The companies as of next year are going to be able, not only the companies, but also the society here with the natural gas plant for the state of Pará. We also, in partnership with the private Equatorial, we're just putting the proper location. You've seen last night in a wonderful dinner that we had at the port. In the future port, we are going to install an electric power station, thinking about the future in our state. We have worked to take electricity in the 4 corners of the state. It's unacceptable not to have electricity in the traditional communities, especially in the countryside of our state. We have electricity, but we still have villages and locations that we don't have. This electricity is being taken to all. Can you imagine that old lady that doesn't have a refrigerator to drink cold water or to preserve the food? And we also, the state of Pará, very aggressively, the tax benefits. Pará has worked on a huge policy to attract the companies and keep the existing ones. We got up to 90% of ICMS on our policy for Marajó as well. It's a strong focus, 100%. Any industry or company that wants to be installed at Marajó has tax benefit given by the state of the government, so that we can bring dignity and income for the municipality of Marajó. It deserves all the focus, and the government of the state, with our First Lady, Daniela Barbalho, taking front of many actions in that state, together with the population, developing that region. My time is almost over. also having incentives, especially for the transformation industry and modernization and upgrades of the existing ones. Renato, we have a union project. I don't believe anybody can do anything alone. We have called all the companies to be getting to know all the industries taking solutions. When we have the work meetings on the industry, visiting them, we take the solutions for those industries. Sometimes it could be environmental license, incentive, or labor, or many times to get to them and continue producing and believing in the state of Pará. And this has been our goal. We have 158 companies that have been granted. Our state continues with a dynamic state. The state of Pará is a champion in the generation of employment due to a very aggressive and positive policy. And in the past, we didn't have this. And in a very difficult moment of all the society went through, I'm going to go quickly through this number. The state of Pará, more than 500 million reais for all the sectors so that we could go through this difficult moment with the trade, services. Just for you to have an idea of this volume, it's the same as São Paulo has granted. The funds that have been created, the numbers are available for you. And here, this is another very important revolution of the government. When we took over, when Eller took over the state of Pará, we had a city called Ananindeua. It was the third most violent city of the world. The governor, in a very good initiative, brought in the national force, worked with intelligence, and they have created what we call the territory for peace. We mapped all the neighborhood related to the security, just to have an idea. Even the post office could not go in. We went there with the national force. But not only, we took dignity to that population, qualification, talking to the children, to the mothers, and now we have opened the first peace territory, which is a space that we are very proud by Bel Lovo. She is a renowned architect, where our society can be there with 80 services of the secretariats to be served, and sports and leisure for our youngsters. Here you have the pictures of the inauguration. This is the first one at Icoi, in the city that I talked to you, which is very violent with this great revolution. He was the mayor of this city. It's a commitment not only to the city, but also to the others of our state. And here, just to finish, it's a sentence that I have used for you to reflect on this. We'll always be together. Deploying ideas and sustainability is the guarantee that we can harvest a future and conscient. I'm very motivated for us to be talking to all of you and showing that Pará is the solution for Brazil and to the world. Thank you. Very good. Excellent. We can really see that the state of Pará is more than prepared for this challenge that we have talked about, and we need to bring the development to the Amazon region with responsibility, with sustainability, but we need to do this, what the government of the state and your secretariat has led. Congratulations. It's a great program, Secretary José Fernando Gomes. And now, I would like to call our second member, Luiza Antonaccio, specialist in infrastructure for a climate policy initiative, which is going to be online. I'm just waiting for the connection with Luiza. Hello, good morning. Good morning, Luiza, please. Good morning. Well, first of all, I would like to thank for the invitation and also to greet the governor and the secretariat. It's a pleasure to be here. I will share here my screen to start the presentation. Can you see? Well, before starting the content, I would just like to present quickly here we are an organization that have been working for public policy for environmental issues based on researches and also with the objective to contribute to implement the public policies. In 2018, we have started a research for federal universities in the Amazon. And some of the findings of this research are going to help us to answer these questions on how we can have the social environmental in the Amazon. Well, this is the current scenario of the deforestation in the legal Amazon. These are the data from September this year from the Amazon. 1,224 square kilometers of total deforestation in September. We understand that terrestrial infrastructure is one of the drivers of deforestation. More than 80% happen around railways, roads. This is an example through the Trans-Amazon in the fishbone format. This is around in Pará. And continuing the state of Pará, we have 3 major federal projects that are being planned or that are already located in the state of Pará, which has a huge potential to deforest 6,717 in 30 years. Ferrogrão is one of them. And it's very important for us to look at these projects and think about strategies to reduce the deforest effects and also to reduce the social environmental impacts. Currently, it's the environmental licensing is the main tool to assess the social environmental impacts and also have the mitigation actions. However, we understand that the licensing is saturated. Everything is sorted out in the licensing and it ends up being a bottleneck for this infrastructure projects. But we can see, if we can look at the whole cycle of the project, is that the licensing happens in the late moment. So the anticipation and the enhancement of the social environmental analysis are crucial to reduce the impacts of deforestation. So specifically, what and how we can improve in the social environmental analysis of the infrastructure projects. The first thing is the enhancement of the decision taking of the public power. How can we do this? Just by deploying a clear order of the phases that the project needs to go through would bring a much bigger transparency for us. When we perform the research, we have identified all the phases that the project needs to go through in the planning, even the operating license, and we understand that each phase has its purpose and the documentation that needs to be submitted and approved, but the legislation is not clear on what is the order that they need to follow. So in practice, many times they do this in parallel or even in an order that would not be very efficient. So in this flow that we have this on the slide, there is an order that not only a logic point with the purpose of each phase, but also in a way that we can enhance the anticipation of the social environmental analysis. Reason why the previous analysis can be obtained after the concession contract. And in this flow, we can have this previous license obtained in the sustainability area. And then, still in this topic of order of the phases of anticipation of the social environment, this would be the moments for the elaboration or the technical feasibility and the environmental impact. Because today we don't have a requirement even for this point that will be done, since we see this, we have this point that this could be done in this point. It's much more efficient. It can be an instrument to anticipate this point. This can be enhanced, and it can be part of this point, and also to detail the orders that are specific from EIA. The third point that would really help us to improve this point would be the creation of a new phase. That will be the feasibility phase. Before the feasibility phase, this would turn the process that would be much more done. So the questions that would be answered in this phase would be structuring processes for analysis and complexity, but also that could be answered by the secondary points. So the cost for these questions wouldn't be that high. Very complex as this point, as the environmental point, but also that will be sufficient to understand if that project, or if it's a project that does not have any chance and has to be disposed. So in this moment, it's still an option because we didn't spend that much money. It's very different from us to get in a previous licensing and not to be able to put your project, because we already spent a huge amount of money for the environmental impact in study and also the engineering. When we go through the next topic that could be also improved in the social environmental impact analysis, are the social environmental studies, and how can we improve these studies? One of the points that can be improved on these studies is the delimitation of the direct influence area. This is an example of Ferrogrão, as it is in the environmental impact. You can see that the indirect influence area in the social economic established from a buffer of 10 kilometers from the railroad. However, if we think about why did we get to this number of 10 kilometers in this road, there is no methodology behind it to explain this number. So it's much more based on the experience of the consulting that this is formed. But if we think about if it's possible to have a methodology that in fact would understand what would be the indirect impact of a project, maybe we can have a different scenario of an influence area like this one. In this case, it's also from Ferrogrão, using a methodology for the market that you can see that the area is really different from what is being considered in the environmental impact. Another point related to the enhancement of the social environmental studies is the quality of these studies. In our analysis, we have identified that we have guidelines and international premises of good practices that will highlight components that should be analyzed in infrastructure studies. And in many of these studies that we are able to analyze for roads, none of these studies were able to consider all these components that the international good practices recommend. So we would have a space for the analysis, not only for the environmental impact, but also the feasibility, technically and environmentally speaking. And also, in this point, it's important to consider that the studies, they will verify the reference terms. This chart is just an example of the feasibility studies in which you can see that some of them in fact has covered the reference term but others not. In a specific case of the feasibility study, we didn't have access to the minutes of meeting which have approved these studies, nor the ones that related to the commitment terms and also the requirements for the commitment terms. So it's difficult to assess what was the justification that made these licenses to be approved. This takes us to the third point that would really help the analysis, which is the social environmental analysis, which is transparency. It's a transversal point, and the need to increase the transparency, it's not only important for the follow-up and monitoring while taking decision for the public points, but also for the safety of those who are going to invest in the country. In our research, we had access to 43% of the document that in thesis were supposed to be available. It's a relatively low number, and still that we had requested and using the law of access to information, and sometimes these are negative. They inform that document doesn't exist or it's a confidential document, so it's very complicated for monitoring of the academic and the civil society, and even for the decision-taking process. A recommendation would be a unique data bank where all the documents would be available. In 2018, when we started this research, even on the government websites, we didn't have the same data related to the same project. From 2018 until now, we have progressed, and these sites have been updated, and nowadays we have a better alignment for information. Even the websites seeing what phase the project is located, and much more related to the documentation. It's still a huge challenge. So that's the reason why we have all this information and details, and the charts that we have this available on the website are available here, and I'm also available if we have any questions. Thank you, Luiza. It was a very good presentation. I think it demonstrates to us that we have noticed in this chart that Luiza has shown us the amount of items to be complied, and how our existing legislation to make the projects feasible and all the routines that they are submitted, which shows what I've mentioned before related to the progress of the Brazilian legislation and also the innovation of this process respecting the sustainability, and also to the citizen. Brazil needs this long-term point, not a government vision. Has to work in a sustainable manner, and the discussion of this event, this infrastructure event for the Amazon, and also the panel for sustainable infrastructure, which would try to comply with the situation. I believe that we still have some minutes, so I'm going to put some questions that have already been made to me. And before, I would like to ask a personal question, Secretary. In your presentation, the railroad of Pará that you mentioned that are going to cover 12 municipalities of the state, does it also cover any idea related to the transportation of passengers, or is it exclusively just for cargo? My dear Renato, please, thank you for your question. This is a concern of the Paraense community, and it's clear and transparent for everybody. It's going to be a cargo railroad and also for passengers. This is a determination for the governor. Whoever is going to build this railroad will have to have this in mind, so we can have the complete logistic of the 12 municipalities, and maybe in the future 20 and the whole region, because you will be able, once you have the main stretch of the railroad, you could be interconnecting the railroad with the full logistics. Since I come from the railroad sector, let me go deeper in the question. This is an initiative of the government of Pará in an isolated manner. Recently, the National Congress has approved all the authorization, the new milestone, legal milestone. Do you cover the launch of, let's say, the investment as of 1999 years, or how is the idea of this project, Secretary? This is a project of the government of Pará. It's a railroad that is going to be deployed only inside our state. The determination is for us to do this fast. As I have said, the environmental study, we already have the environment secretariat, we have investors that pretty soon we're going to announce these investors. Like I have said, Elder is the one that will give you the good news, and I'm pretty sure one thing, the railroad of Pará is going to come out, and the works, after all the environmental studies, as of next year, we're going to start as soon as we have authorization from SEMA, and they're going to announce the company which is going to build the railroad. Excellent, thank you very much. Let me make a question for Luiza that has gotten here, related to the project law, the bill for the environmental licensing, which is currently progressing in the Federal Senate. What can you tell us about this, Luiza? And in what sense do you believe that this law, if approved, could collaborate with this, let's say so, with this situation that we have here for sustainability of infrastructure of the Amazon region? Thank you. Well, I believe, as I have presented in the beginning, the environmental licensing is already in a very late phase in the project. It's the only tool that effectively analyzes the social environmental points so that everything is sorted out in the licensing. So it becomes a bottleneck. However, it doesn't need to be a bottleneck if we anticipate the social environmental analysis and in such a way remove the bottleneck and the issues that have to be analyzed nowadays in the social environmental, because there is no other moment for them to be analyzed. What we can say is that in fact we have other moments that they can be analyzed. Since the planning, they could be analyzed when we have a project. We can think about the trace in which are the sensitive areas it's going to go through. Thus, you can start structuring the project, so whenever it's within the environmental licensing, it just needs to go through a final tuning. So what I see from this licensing project that is happening is that it seems to solve, and the licensing would be better. However, the problem is not this point. It's a lack of organization that in fact we will have this to analyze since the beginning of the social environmental impact. Thank you very much. And then we have another question here in the line of the licensing. After we go through these other points, I will read the question that unfortunately we don't have the person who made the question. However, it says, your suggestion of the order of the structuring phases suggests that the auction or biddings for the infrastructure is after the approval of the project and the issuance of the environmental licensing. And then there's a risk of the project which has the expertise, and the CPI doesn't cover the manager. And at the risk of course, of those who cover this. To strengthen the social environmental study, we understand if the project is feasible environmentally, it would not be a risk. The environment wouldn't be a risk. So, if you have the public power to go this to the concession company, of course, this is another point. However, I believe this can be sorted out contractually, not necessarily to change the order that we are proposing. It's a huge challenge, and I am organized with your struggle to put infrastructure projects based on all these diversities of the region itself, and also with the committee to work on the preservation, such as the institutes. Even Luiza called us for this attention. I would like you to tell us, please, what would be the main challenges that you and your department face, and also the co-workers from the other states in the Amazon region they face, so that we would have the infrastructure that would arrive in a sustainable manner in order to respect the limits for the implementation. But also on the other side, don't take too long to be ready in the bureaucracy for approval and in the implementation, despite the fact that this has an environmental impact. But what would be the main challenge for us to do so, answering the society's demand? Renato, as Luiza has said, the preservation of the environment with the infrastructure, they need to work together. This is the mindset of the world, not only for here, but for the whole world, so that we can get investors. We're not going to bring an investor for a railroad that does not have all this care and this mindset. And the speed is fundamental, of course, respecting all the norms and laws. We have worked thoroughly talking to all the stakeholders. We have different fronts, since the public manager, like the city hall, the local society, the Quilombola movements, where we're going to be talking to them, the influence area. But for me, I believe the key word is dialogue and action. And the governor has done this in all his policies, and with this mindset for the preservation. We have different programs. I'm not going to focus on all of them because we have a huge number of programs in a sustainable area of the 279, Ourilândia, Água Azul, where we had a huge deforestation area. And once the government took a very fast action, delivering also titles for the land, we only believe once you give a title to that citizen that's there, you will be able to give him all the legal aspects, credit, and also be able to put pressure on the person. If you don't have a CPF that you can charge from, so there are many programs from the government, but the key word is the anticipation and dialogue. So we'll be able to build this together. In our development, mining and energy secretary, we are working together so we can have the productive sector, the entities and the stakeholders. They are fundamental for the S system as a whole, the industry, the agriculture, the commerce, and the association as well. The local business association, as Luiza has said, we need to anticipate the actions, and this is what we are doing for the Pará society so that we can form, qualify, and have this mindset. And they are the eyes, not only for them, but also for the government of this big infrastructure. Thank you. Very well said. Thinking about this development, an event of this magnitude, before all, it's a very important event. It's not only the discussion of the points and also the specialist's opinion, but also the indications of paths. And I would like to make a question to both of you, starting with Luiza. In the bidding proposal for this event, for example, in the proposal for the Amazonia in Loco, for the discussion and the mindset, and that would indicate, in fact, all the path that we should take. In your opinion, Luiza, what could be being done in this environmental area that you represent as a milestone, as the final point that needs to be overcome? Like he said, the title of the land as being as a first step. I think we all agree to defend this point. I would like to hear from you in this sense. In your opinion, Luiza, what is your proposal for this point? I'm going to reinforce here the need for us to anticipate all the social analysis. When we consider all the sensitive points of this area, it's better, the projects are better, the projects are much more robust and less chance to have a significant impact when in fact we have the license. Excellent, thank you. Secretary, such a dense and heavy topic as land title, in your mindset as a private sector, as you've been from entities, private entities, and as a state secretary on the public power for the development, what would be your words? I believe that the words are the dialogue and knowledge. I believe those two have to be together. We have many actions, as I have said. The government has already talked about this. The government as a whole, with a huge concern with sustainability, the community, the title. This is a milestone of our government. We're giving many, many titles, things that didn't happen for many years, so we can have dignity for our local community. But I believe it's knowledge. People need to know the Amazon, what is being done here, how we're doing this, how we're building different actions in a sustainable manner. And my presentation as a whole, which was held at COPI, giving it to the society almost 500 million reais so that we can be concerned about the bioeconomy and all the sectors of the state. I think it's important for you to be part of the Amazon, know the Amazon, see what's being done. And now I would like to thank João Augusto and all the chamber, European chamber, of our vice president who brought everyone here some days ago. The state of the Amazon, and They went to Belo Monte, went to Paraupebas, came to Belém. So please come and see that there's a lot of things for us to build together. Wonderful. One more question here. This time is for you. The project comes from Jaqueline Silva. The railroad for Pará, it's going to cover 12 municipalities. In these municipalities, are we going to have opportunities for employment of the population of these municipalities so that these municipalities could be directly involved in the railroad of Pará? Jacqueline, excellent question, and this is a concern of our government. By the determination I showed in the presentation, the meetings that we had even before the licensing, we have gone to the society, go to the public manager, so that they can see the networking for the qualification for the locals and qualification of labor. And the S system has been of fundamental importance for us to qualify this together with the Federal University of Pará. We have a railroad engineering course here in our Federal University of Pará, qualifying the people so that we can not only be working and supplying for them and also creating this salary for the municipalities, but in the future operating this railroad of Pará. I come from the railroad system. I feel very comfortable to talk about this. Brazil, right after the more than 100 years ago, was the second biggest railroad in the world. Unfortunately, after the governments on the 1930s, they didn't prioritize this type of investment. And then today we have been used, or we had, because this government made new investments. Until 2-3 years ago, we only had 1/3 of the railroad section operating commercially. We got to 32,000 kilometers of railroad, using in fact more than 14,000 kilometers. So any initiative in the railroad sector, and not only related to cargo, which is logistic, which is fundamental, in a state in which the area can you imagine if this, on the 70s of last century, almost 80% of the people between the cities was happening through railroads in the southeast and in the south region. And unfortunately, we don't have in Brazil any other passenger line except for some cargo lines, which are obliged to put some services for passengers, such as Vitória Minas and other line of Vale. All these railroad initiatives, and I would say, as a person who has always worked in infrastructure, all the infrastructure in our Amazon region is extremely welcome, is extremely necessary. It doesn't make any sense that the soybeans would get out of Mato Grosso and go all the way to the port of São Paulo or Santos by truck, or even for Paraná. It doesn't make any sense. It costs $100 a ton, while we could have make it feasible to have the Ferrogrão, Norte Sul, and other railroads, the railroad of Pará, which is being discussed here. I think all these initiatives are extraordinary, and we can see that the country at the beginning is a blessed country. Despite the fact that we spent this $100 a ton to get to Santos with the soybeans, we spent 25 to take it to Shanghai, to China, 125, competing with the American soybeans, which cost 25 tons to get it to New Orleans, and other 25 to Shanghai. This points of difference, this weather, this climate, this effort, this experience, and the study, the Embrapa, and all the intelligence would allow us to have 3 harvests throughout the year and a wonderful productivity, and we'll recover the 75 US dollars of Brazilian costs that haven't been solved yet. And due to the logistics, it has to be faced. The infrastructure has to be faced with all the reserves and everything that Luiza has mentioned and the Secretary has mentioned as well. I believe that this is the statement of this event. We need to have more communication actually than any other initiative. Your comments. I agree with you, and just to make sure this point, this is the first sector of the investor. The first sector, it goes from Santana to Marabá. There is a point for our European unit, so that we have here, we have 1,000 points and the other points as well. This first section, definitely with all the interconnections, and in the future, and the license is ready, and the connections with this point, the federal universities. We have this point, we were going to have the second section and these connections. It's very important for the development to debate with the specialists so that we together can work with this discussion together with Luiza's team that would like to add, because we want to be together taking dignity for our society. Luiza, would you have any comment to add so that we can facilitate and speed up, let's say, this process with responsibility, with the speech of ESG, which is very latent and also present, let's say so, above all on the Amazon issues. The previous panel that I said was talking about Brasilia with the CNI director for this project, plus 21, that they want to bring all this behavior for ESG for this chapter, and above all, in your expertise in the environmental area, what are your recommendations? Okay, Renato, actually it's very strong. The investors are really more concerned about the social environmental issues, especially when we talk about this Amazon territory. So I believe that all the recommendations that have been presented, they are extremely aligned with what needs to exist. So do you have any clarity with the process, and what would be the decision taking of the public power? And this gives us a much bigger transparency for the investor, which is also a way for the civil society to see how these projects are being analyzed, how the studies are being approved. This brings a bigger safety for us. So this first point is very important. And the second point is what strengthened the environmental issues, and also making use of all the instruments that happen, like the technical and environmental issues that could be used. And I believe when we talk about this point, we need to see and verify what we have from this point and the legislation, and how we can empower to enhance this for the social analysis. Excellent. I'm making use of some minutes here for us to verify this, but I can't lose the opportunity to explore this moment and also to share with you all the perspectives. In this sense, the Secretary, I would like to make a question for both of you again, Secretary and then Luiza. What can we do to accelerate even more, let's say so, this process related to overcome this infrastructure that is required? Is there any other point to overcome this? And also this point as well, to be able to have this approval that many times ends up impacting in the results point of view, a new bottleneck and a new issue to be solved, almost opening a project when that project is already overloaded based on all the difficulty that we have for approval. I would like to hear from you how to overcome this bottleneck. I believe we have already talked about this. I think it's anticipation. We need to anticipate and be checking what is going to be done and work together. For those who think is going to work on an infrastructure by themselves, they won't be able to get it done and not even get the investor. So we need, in a transparent manner, and this is a determination from the governor elder for all the works, so that we can show the society, talk to the society, anticipating all the actions, so that whenever we have, like Luiza has said, the environmental licensing process, it's much faster and with more confidence. With the public hearing where the society is going to say what they think as well, but the preparation and the meetings before this is fundamental to anticipate any type of problem until we have these points. We're talking about infrastructure, but any other type of productive chain that is going to be installed in the countryside of any state. We have an industry that is going to take 500 people. We need to be qualifying these people so that we won't take other people to occupy those points. So we need to have this anticipation and the efforts where we are going to have the projects to happen in the stipulated deadline. In your mindset, Luiza, how do you understand, how can this be accelerated, of course, without losing the responsibility, criteria, and the environmental protection that is extremely important? I agree with what the Secretary said, and the anticipation is a key word. And I will also add that the planning is another key word when we talk about an eventual speed of the projects. And nowadays, we have a national plan for logistics. If I'm not mistaken, it's a mid-term, I think 9 years or 5 years. And I think we need a long-term planning so that we will be able to see what is expected related to infrastructure for the country. And as of this planning, in fact, we will incorporate the social environmental points, and since the planning, we will be able to have this analysis. But also for what happens today, if we talk about nowadays, definitely the anticipation would really help us. Very good. Okay, time is over. So I would like to thank, I still had a question. It's going to be addressed to the Secretary. It once again is related to the railroad. Thank you very much for your attention. Now let's receive our Vice President, General Mourão. Thank you very much. We would like to thank all the participants of the panel